morning again. Just wanted to mention another birthday that's happening tomorrow, and that is the 240th birthday of our nation. And I wanted to just take a moment to honor and think back on what it takes for this country to exist. That there were people who 300 or more years ago left their homes seeking freedom, seeking to move away from the religious and political persecution of the countries they were in, who got on little tiny wooden ships and sailed across a very large ocean. You know, today we get to fly across that ocean, we complain, oh, it takes so long, it's 6 hours or 8 hours, or maybe even it's 24 if we're going to some country halfway around the world. For them it was, I believe, months or at least a month to get across the ocean. And sometimes they didn't even get across the ocean because of tides and winds and hardships. And those people who arrived on our shores, who helped to create this, who worked sometimes in collaboration and sometimes in hostility towards the natives who were already here, but eventually, you know, came to claim this land 240 years ago. This country as being free from its mother country, England, and said, you know, we want something different. We have a different vision. We have a higher vision than what's currently here. And all that has gone in transpired, and sometimes it's been up and sometimes it's been down, but all that's transpired over the last 240 years to bring us to this very day today. So I just want to thank everybody and honor everybody and take a moment to where we just simply bless everyone, every single person who's ever been involved, ourselves included, in the making of this country. I believe this country is still the greatest country on earth. One of the things we talk about with religious science is that it's a truly American religion. It was founded here, it was started here. We have that open, can-do, look-forward attitude, you know, that consciousness about this teaching. And that's a reflection of the American spirit. That yes, we can move forward. And so I'm honored to be a minister in this teaching and grateful to be part of this country. So our talk today is, probably enough, the courage to be forgiving. Have you noticed it takes, anybody ever tried forgiving somebody or something? It takes a little courage sometimes, right? It's not always, I don't know how you've experienced it, but for me it's not always been easy. And so we're going to talk about that. We're still working with our vision of creating a world that works for all. And so part of the Global Heart vision of our overall organization says we see a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. Is the norm. How would you like to live in a world where even if you messed up, you were forgiven? You know, when I grew up in a in a home and in a school system where, you know, sin and mistakes were not well accepted, let's just put it that way, okay? There were painful consequences. And my first real job that I had, I worked for Aetna Life and Casualty's Medicare department, and I got, after a year living in Portland, I got promoted to their home office back in Hartford. And somewhere in that first year, I made a pretty good-sized mistake. Messed up something pretty bad. I don't even remember anymore what it was, but I do remember that I messed up something pretty bad. And I expected anything from being fired to being yelled at to being, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that a ton of bricks was going to come down on my head. And said my boss and his manager just said, oh, okay, that happened. Well, let's figure out how to work this out and how to, you know, clean it up. And you know, we're sorry, we apparently didn't quite teach you enough to know that yet. And there was no shame, there was no blame, there was no guilt. It was just, okay, this happened, let's just move forward. And I remember that because I remember thinking, that's not how my family worked. That's not how I grew up, you know. And it was like this breath of fresh air, this load lifted off of my shoulders, and it felt fabulous. And of course, I worked harder to never do that mistake again. But you know, it was like without that consequence. So last week we were looking at Byron Katie's work, and we were talking about the idea of not just tolerating what is, but loving what is. Loving what is. one of the reasons why we are best off to love what is because all there is God. And so if there's something of God that I don't love, then there's something of God that I don't love. Can I love what is? Now, I don't always have to like it. I still don't like Brussels sprouts. I know they're all one with God, okay? But I don't like them. But I love them. I know they're perfect, whole, complete, exactly as they are. There's only this one life. Can I love this one life? Can I live in this one life in love and know that it's perfect? That even Brussels sprouts have their place. We had some ants in our kitchen a couple nights ago, and even ants are perfect. Sure, we did everything we could to get them out of there, but even ants are perfect. So our reading today says that God doesn't see or know sin. Ernest Holmes says, "Why should it disturb anyone to be told that God knows nothing of sin, nothing of want, nothing of lack of any kind? The tragedy would be if God did know. Because if God knew sin, he would be a sinner. For what the infinite mind knows must be. Sin or mistakes are outside the province of reality." Sin is outside. God doesn't hold you in sin. For all of us who are told that we were, sinners and God had to forgive us, no, God doesn't even know sin. It's not in the consciousness of this one, because to say sin, if God is all there is, again, in order to say there's sin, God would have to look at some part of itself and say, "Oh, you lousy sinner." Would you look at your little finger right now and say, "Oh, you lousy sinner"? Or would you say, "I love you, you're part of me"? Yeah. So God doesn't look at part of itself and condemn itself. That would be silly, wouldn't it? That would be self-destructive. Capital S, self-destructive. The infinite universe would start to collapse in on itself. So how do we get to sin? If we're carrying around a list of things we don't love, we can't be free. And who's carrying the list? We are. There's an old saying that says, carrying resentment is like drinking poison hoping the other person will die. If we carry around a list of resentments, we're pouring into our bodies all the chemicals that we have of the anger and the hurt and the blame and the shame and the guilt and all that stuff, which poisons our own bodies. How powerful would it be to be free of that? A whole lot of us take care of our bodies. We drink healthy and eat healthy, and some of us go to the gym. Half of our family goes to the gym. And we take care of ourselves. Do we take care of our emotions and our thoughts and how we're viewing the world, how we're viewing other people? So since we're looking to become in greater alignment with Spirit, I presume that's why you're all here, that's why I'm here, then we must drop our list of sins. So let's take a look. What is a sin? A sin is a violation of a rule. And who made the rule up? We did. Somewhere we made up the rule. If there's a violation of a rule, we made it up. The Puritans, speaking of people who came early into our country, had a rule that said music and laughter and happiness were not spiritual. They were not in alignment with God. Now, I don't know how they got to that. First of all, in the Psalms, there's a couple of wonderful Psalms that say, "Make a joyous noise to the Lord," right? Jesus himself says, "People call me a glutton and a wine drinker." And yet there's religions that say, "Oh, you can't drink." It's like, okay, but Jesus did. Actually, a fair amount in the Bible from what it says. And all this. Where did the rule come from? Somebody made it up. And if we are holding on to the rule, guess what? We made it up for ourselves in our own world. Take a breath, right? We made it up. I have an idea, and we have a whole list of rules. This is how religion and spirituality are. We have rules of how church and how a minister should act and how ministry should be. This is where the fundamentalists are great at this, right? Lots and lots of rules. We have lists of rules for parenting. We have lists of rules for social interactions. We have lists of rules for work. We have lists of rules for relationships. We have lists of rules for what patriotism looks like. We have lists of rules for everything. Have you noticed? And when we violate an internal rule, we believe that we have sinned. And we can carry around unforgiveness for ourselves and blame. When somebody else violates our internal rule, right? Then they have sinned. They have sinned in our own mind. Now, they may not know that they've sinned. You ever been on the road where somebody kind of does something, cuts you off or something like that, and you're angry for the rest of the day, and you realize that person has gone off blithely, unaware of the fact they cut you off, and you go into you may have gone into the office and told people, oh, there was this jerk on the road, and they just did this and that, and the other person's going on their day completely having a wonderful day or whatever they're having. And we're still sitting there carrying and poisoning ourselves, right? We're hanging on to it. So our list of rules prevents us from being present to what is. And last week we talked about being present to what is. We see the world through our filters. We see the world through our list of shoulds and should nots, instead of just saying what is. We see the world saying it should be this way instead of just saying it is this way. It just is. Ernest Holmes tells us, remembering that the Spirit holds no evil toward anyone and that God is love, we should emulate this divine lesson and forgive all, that our hearts may be free from the burden of our own condemnation. And I'll repeat that part of that last line, that our hearts, whose heart? Our heart, may be free from the burden of our own condemnation. See, we've already established God doesn't condemn. God is simply love. I remember one of my teachers said, God is dysfunctionally loving. It can't help itself. It just loves. It's just loving. It is love. When, in the Bible it says God is love. We teach God is love. It's not that it loves, it is love. I remember when I read Emmett Cady, who said, God is not loving. That is, God is not a being that is loving. God is love itself. You can't get out of love. We can't get out of love. We're immersed in it. Do we want to be in alignment with it? That's the only question. And when we're holding a sin, either against ourselves or somebody else, then we are out of alignment with the love that is available to us in the universe. And the best thing we can do is say, how quickly can I get myself back in alignment with the universe? How quickly can I get back into love? Into freedom, into joy, into whatever it is. How quickly can I do that? And then it's a case of who can beat who to forgiveness? How quickly can I let go? So how do we do this? Let's take a look at a couple steps. The first one is notice where the violated rule really lives. Really lives. If somebody has violated a rule, whose rule is it? It lives within me, right? If it didn't, I wouldn't see a sin. If I didn't say that, on Sundays you're supposed to wear a suit and tie when you're the minister, and I showed up in flip-flop shorts and a t-shirt that said Seahawks on it. Notice the rule. When in Reading, one should love the 49ers, right? Or, whatever. But we have these rules. And so when we violate the rules, we step into that. But the rule lives within us. The work of Byron Katie reminds us to ask a powerful question: can I absolutely know that it's true about anything that occurs, about any opinion we have? If I think that you've slighted me, if I think that you've hurted me, can I absolutely know that it's true? Maybe you were just thinking of something else when you walked by and didn't say hi. Maybe something else was going on, a different thought. I can't absolutely know what's going on in your mind, can I? And you can't absolutely know what's going on in my mind. And we can make up stuff, We can say, well, they did this, this, and this, and in my set of rules, that means this. When a person's sitting here like this, we can say, oh, they've got a closed body posture, and they're feeling resistant. Or they've got something going on, they want to rest their arms on their chest, or whatever, they have their own reasons. What's my rule? What does it say? So notice where the rule really lives. That will help us to start to do the second step, which is to let go of the condemnation. Because in order to have to do forgiveness, we have at some point in time condemned somebody. Jesus, when he encounters the woman who's caught in the act of adultery and everybody wants to stone her to death, and he says, let he who's without sin cast the first stone, and they all walk away. He says to her, does no one condemn you? Then neither do I condemn you. He doesn't say, I forgive you. He doesn't view that there's anything to forgive. He just says, I don't condemn you. See, if I'm holding resentment towards myself or somebody else, there's a point where I have condemned myself or that other person. And so can I find that point where I have condemned and start to let go? Can I let go of the condemnation? So just notice that. Can I be willing to let go? If I don't know how to let go, can I at least be willing to let go? Or as a friend of mine likes to say, can I be willing to be willing to be willing to let go? If I'm not quite willing to let go yet. I'm at least willing to be willing to let go. Understand that there's probably more going on in the situation than I know. I would say it's probably the truth of any situation, anywhere, anytime. Right? But there's always more going on than we know. Anybody have encountered that? Okay. Oftentimes there's more going on for me than I ever know. There's aspects of myself, my own inner wisdom that is guiding me in places that sometimes I will label that as a mistake, and years down the road I'll look back and say, wow, that was the best thing I ever did. Hurt at the time, was frustrating at the time, best thing I ever did. So I do this letting go. I do this noticing where the rules are. I do it for who? The other person? For myself. I do it for me. That I can be free. That I can be free. I'm trying to set myself up to be free. I'm trying to create myself as being more in alignment with the divine. And so I practice this so that I can be free, that I can be more in the love of Spirit, that I can be more in the joy and the freedom of Spirit. The only reason to forgive has nothing to do with the other person. It doesn't condone their behavior. It doesn't say it was right or wrong. It just says, I'm not going to drink that poison and carry that around anymore. I'm done carrying that. Yes, it happened. What is. And I don't need to walk around with a ball and chain from that happening anymore. And we know people who have something. I was just talking to somebody the other day who said they met somebody who had something happened back in 1974. And they were still to this day living their life conditioned based on what had happened in 1974. Okay? Can we let go? How quickly can we let go? Because the more quickly we can let go, the more we can return to the nature of our freedom. You know, the reason this country is such a beautiful country is because it's in alignment with what the universe wants, which is freedom for all. It's our core principle, freedom. And so can we get into alignment with that? So how would you like to practice that? Have an experience with it. Damien's got a little bit of music queued up there. So we're going to do a practice within to take that and see how this works, and to just, you can't do this wrong, by the way, okay? Just so don't commit a sin on yourself by, quote, doing this wrong. If you sit there and go, I don't want to do it, just quietly listen to the music, have a nice time. If you want to practice it, play with it, and just see what it feels like. So I'm going to invite you, if you want to gently close your eyes and to begin to relax and move into a space of feeling where you're centered, where you're in alignment with that deepest inner wisdom, that deepest inner love that you are. Take another breath. Relax ever more deeply. Imagine yourself now moving from where you are now, and beginning to walk down a path that will lead you to a place that is your sacred space. Some of you have been here before. A place where you feel immersed in love, completely safe, immersed in wisdom. And allow yourself now to arrive in that space. Notice what it looks like and feels like. Notice any sounds or smells. And let yourself arrive and be immersed in that place. Find a place to sit. And feel totally safe and secure. Feeling as close to your oneness as you can. For some people it helps, and if you'd like to bring a guide, someone to support you, a person of great wisdom and great love. Perhaps it's your own inner wisdom self, perhaps it's a person, a being, an animal totem, whatever it is for you that can guide you beyond just your own self. And if so, invite that person into your space now. That guide into your space. And let yourself be supported. And taking another deep breath. You're going to invite into your space the awareness of someone that you feel some hurt or unforgiveness toward. Recognizing that they're in your space, they cannot hurt you. But you're going to invite the awareness of that person into your space. And so let that essence, let that awareness of who they are be there. Noticing that with your guide, you're completely safe. And begin to remember what they've done. What did they do to hurt you? And now, with the help of your guide, ask to be shown what rule within you have they violated. It may seem like a rule that's perfectly reasonable to you. It may seem like how people really should act and should behave. But just notice what the rule is. Perhaps the rule is that they should have spoken to you kindly. Perhaps the rule is that they shouldn't have stolen money. Perhaps the rule is that they shouldn't have physically hurt you. Just notice what the rule is. And now be aware that you probably preferred that they follow this rule, but that they didn't. They didn't. And just notice that what is. They did not follow that rule that you wanted them to follow. Whether it was reasonable or unreasonable, they didn't follow it. And as you contemplate that, remember a time when you haven't followed someone else's rule. When you violated someone else's rule. Perhaps you did it because you were unaware that they had such a rule. Perhaps you did it because at the time you were doing your best, but your best wasn't very good yet. What's known as unskilled behavior. Perhaps you violated just simply because you weren't paying attention in the moment. And notice how you felt when it was pointed out. And now notice and ask yourself the question, is it possible that this person might be like you? They might not have known about your rule. They might have been acting unskillfully. They might have been acting out of their own pain and hurt. They might not have been paying attention. And just like you would like to be forgiven and not have someone hold you in condemnation, would you be willing to let go of the condemnation you might have of this other person? A great spiritual teacher once said, "Forgive us our offenses as we have forgiven our offenders." Would you be willing to treat them as you would like to be treated? Would you be willing to let go of your own hurt and your attachment to it, and to just let that go? You may have carried this story around for a long time. Would you be freer without that story? Will holding on to it either hurt the other person or hurt you or keep you in love? Will holding on to it set you free? And if the answer is no, let it go. Perhaps see it dissolving away from you. Perhaps even see the awareness of that person and your story about them just dissolving out of your sacred space. Let it go. Take a deep breath in and out. And if you've truly let it go, notice that you might feel lighter and more free. Just notice how you feel. And if you're so inclined, make a commitment to yourself and to your guide that you will never pick up that story again, that you've used it to hold yourself down long enough, and you deserve the freedom and the love of the universe. You deserve to be free of that story, free of carrying around the hurt from that experience, and that your freedom is more important than the story. Your freedom is more important than carrying around that pain. And so if you haven't released the essence of that person from your sacred space, do so now, no matter what state you're in with them. But let them go. Knowing that even if you haven't completely detached, you've started to let go of a layer of it, which is wonderful. Thank your guide for their support. Listen to any wisdom that they might have to share with you. And when you feel complete, let your guide return to wherever they live, wherever they exist. And now as you visualize, imagine yourself standing up in your sacred space. You look around and notice if anything has changed in this space. Express gratitude and give a blessing to this space. And begin to step out of it knowing that you can return whenever you choose. It's your sacred space. Imagine yourself now walking on the path back to this place, this sacred space, to where you're sitting in the chair in the spiritual center. Allow yourself to come back fully into your body, into awareness of your body. awareness of in your presence thereof. Take a deep breath, perhaps roll your shoulders, wiggle your fingers, toes, allow yourself to be grounded back in your body, and when you're ready, gently open your eyes and be present, fully present here. So you can choose, if you want to allow this to be your own personal Independence Day, your own day of freedom. The universe holds nothing against anyone. The universe, infinite presence, holds nothing against anyone. Our consciousness, our own consciousness, will manifest our freedom as we free others. And our bondage as we hold others in bondage. And that's the awareness of that saying of the spiritual teacher Jesus. Forgive us our offenses as we forgive others for their offense. It's not about that the universe holds us. It's a matter of consciousness teaching. That as I hold others in bondage, it's consciousness, it's the law that I will hold myself in bondage. And so allow me to free others, recognizing that I will be freed by that process. So this week our spiritual practice is just simply one thing. Just become more aware of our condemnations, where we hold people in condemnation, and let them go. Let go of our condemnations of ourselves, let go of our condemnation of others. Let it go. Your freedom, your joy, your love, your life is more important than hanging on to those old stories. I want to close with a quote from Ernest. Forgiveness is eternal and ever available. What a load is dropped from the shoulders of personal responsibility when we realize that the eternal mind holds naught against anyone. But to those who feel that this is unfair, it will be a hard saying. O foolish one and blind, what do you know about virtue? Has your life always been above reproach? Have you ever fallen short of the divine calling? Who are you to point the finger of scorn at your brother? The one who feels self-righteousness rise from his petty virtues lives a life of self-delusion. When we learn to put away our petty virtues and our petty vices, then we shall see clearly what truth is. So I invite you this week to see clearly what truth is, and the truth is that you and I and everyone else is immersed in a field of love. And you just simply let that be. What is. So let us move into prayer. And there is only that one presence, that one life. That is all there is. Whether we remember it, forget it, know it, or don't know it at all, there is still only that one life. And that life is love. That life is freedom. That life is life itself, the aliveness of this universe, vibrating in every single thing. One great chord, one great note, vibrating in through and as each of us. And each of us being an individualized expression of that one life, that one infinite love. Each of us is already whole, perfect, and complete. We are immersed in that love. We have never left it. We never will leave it. We're already it in form. And so as we breathe that awareness in and out, I speak my word that we simply today and this week remember that truth. That we say, I am love. And everyone else is love. Whether I or they remember it or are aware of it or not, we are still love. We are still the one infinite presence. And we are free. And so we, this day, celebrate our own personal freedom from bondage. We celebrate our own personal freedom from wherever we have held ourselves or anyone else, because all there is one, and so there is no one else, just us. Wherever we have held what seems like the other or seems like ourselves in bondage, we celebrate our freedom by letting that go. No war is necessary. Just simply the willingness to move into the truth, to let go of the old story, to do what's known as forgiving and releasing. And so for each person who says yes to this, for each person who is willing to be in this love, to be in this total openness and oneness, I am ever so grateful. For all the love that moves through each of us, I'm ever so grateful. For the times that we forget and the times that we then get to remember, I'm ever so grateful. Knowing that all of it is perfect. Each of us is perfect. And so I release this word into a law that moves it into form and expression in the most beautiful, perfect ways possible here and now, through each of us. Knowing that it does so, we simply affirm that and allow it in by saying, and so it is.